Hey everybody, hello. Welcome to Banfield this Tuesday night. Tonight, the Republican candidate for the U.S. Senate in Georgia is doing the very last thing that a pro-family, anti-abortion, God-fearing candidate, or someone who claims to be all those things, wants to do. He is denying that he knew anything about a girlfriend's abortion in 2009 that he allegedly recommended and then paid for. And that is an especially huge deal because he campaigns saying he's 100% against abortion, even if the mother could die. The Daily Beast was the first to report that Herschel Walker, the former football star who's trying to unseat Raphael Warnock for that Senate seat, well, they're saying he wasn't always the anti-abortion champion that he wants his voters to think he is. The Daily Beast isn't naming the woman, but they say that she has the receipts from the clinic and a copy of a check from Herschel Walker. They also showed this Get Well card that's emblazoned with Walker's very distinctive signature. But as explosive as all of that is, tonight the real shockwaves are coming from Walker's 23-year-old son, Christian Walker. He is the only child out of the four that we know of that the candidate ever voluntarily acknowledged was his. Christian Walker is a social media influencer, and he's a conservative who supported his dad's campaign at first, but now says he can't take the lies.
I stayed silent when it came out that my father, Herschel Walker, had all these random kids across the country, none of whom he raised. And you know my favorite issue to talk about is father absence. Surprise, because it affected me. That's why I talk about it all the time, because it affected me. Family values, people. He has 4 kids, 4 different women, wasn't in the house raising one of them. He was out having sex with other women. Do you care about family values? I was silent, lie after lie after lie. The abortion card drops yesterday. It's literally his handwriting in the card. They say they have receipts, whatever. He gets on Twitter. He lies about it. Okay, I'm done. Done.
But despite what his son Christian says, Herschel Walker says the abortion story is a flat-out lie. And he even took it a step further, saying this, quote, "I'm not taking this anymore. I'm planning to sue the Daily Beast for this defamatory lie. It will be filed tomorrow morning." Well, that morning came and went, and so far he has not filed anything. And folks, let's remember, when anybody ever says I'm going to file for defamation, I can't wait, because it means they have to go under oath, and then they have to say the thing is a lie. And some people just don't want to do that for whatever reason. As for the voters, they are well aware that Walker supports a national abortion ban with no exceptions, even for the health and life of the mother. Raphael Warnock has made sure of that.
This advertising.
I'm Raphael Warnock, and I approve this message.
There's one issue where Herschel Walker actually has made his position clear.
Mr. Walker, do you support any exceptions to abortion bans?
Do I support any?
Yeah, any exceptions to abortion bans?
Not right now, I don't.
Walker's for banning abortion, even in cases of rape, incest, or to protect the mother's life. And Herschel Walker wants to go even further.
There's not a national ban on abortion right now, and I think that's a problem.
Should Herschel Walker really be representing Georgia?
So the question now is, will Walker's October surprise move the needle in a super tight, super high-stakes Senate race? Or, given the pre-existing thicket of lies and contradictions and shocking allegations about Walker's personal and professional lives, is any of this really a surprise at all? I'm joined now by Philip Bump. He's the national correspondent for the Washington Post. You can read his column on all of this online. And conservative strategist Charmaine Yoest, who's a former member of the Trump administration in the Department of Health and Human Services. So, Philip, I'm going to begin with you. Are the Republicans clutching their pearls over this? I know the Democrats are, but if the Republicans aren't, shouldn't they be?
Well, it depends on who you're talking about. There are a lot of, I think, Republican voters are frustrated by this story having come out, both because it obviously hurts his bid and also because it certainly does reflect some inconsistency in Walker's position. Walker's allies have been very quick to suggest that he has changed over this period of time. But this, of course, is, as you pointed out, not only just about the story of the abortion, but also about the reaction of his son and about these the elevation of all these past questions about his family history. So I think there are real concerns about it. And I think fundamentally what this is going to come down to is, to what extent are Republicans going to be content with having a potential 51st vote in the Senate, even if that vote happens to be this person who has done these things that they find unpleasant?
Well, there's the big question, right, Charmaine? I even heard the Republican leader in the Senate, Mitch McConnell, saying, candidate quality. And I kind of thought he was talking about Herschel Walker, because this is one of many weird things that, have come up about Herschel Walker. I don't have to tell you. I know it's probably something you're not too pleased about in the Republican Party. But, he stressed this national abortion ban, which so many Republicans ran away from when Lindsey Graham suggested it. It's just not popular with the majority of the country, right? Many people have varying views on abortion, but an all-out ban is certainly not one that seems to poll really highly. So with this on top of that, is this something that Herschel Walker can survive, Charmaine?
Ashleigh, I think he can. And I'm glad you started with the point that these are serious allegations. No one likes them. They're seedy. It's uncomfortable. But here's the thing that I think gets lost in the conversation a lot, Ashleigh, as the allegations get thrown around and repeated, is that people don't fully grasp how much the pro-life movement is populated by people who've had abortions, who've been participants in abortions, who've paid for abortions. And so unless they're coming out and saying that this is something that he did last week or last month, when people hear that this is something that's in his past, a lot of them identify with it as formerly pro-choice people who are now in the pro-life movement. So I think that's something that very frequently gets missed, is that people then kind of, it backfires and that people start to feel defensive for him. Pivoting a little bit to the political question you ask of whether he can survive it, the other thing is that you mentioned it, it gets mentioned a lot. One of the biggest political cliches is this idea of an October surprise. And look, Ashleigh, we've already got end caps full of Halloween candy. People are looking at the calendar, they hear the allegations, they look at the calendar like, oh, it's October, here we go again.
Yeah.
And so
no, I get you. It's, October it's a good indication that this was a plan. I even think about today's, abortion task force that Joe Biden was hosting with a big long table and, sound bites that I think, really will mobilize a lot of people to get out and vote if they don't like the idea of the national abortion ban, because Joe Biden brought that up today. But Charmaine, I just want to go back a little bit to what you said about a lot of people who are pro-life have had abortions in the past. I completely understand that. Everybody is personal in the way they decide, what they need, what they want, and then they deal with it afterwards in different ways. We're not talking about that, because Herschel Walker is just flat out denying this. He is saying absolutely not. And he's been asked in the past multiple times if he's ever been in concert with someone to get an abortion or help someone get an abortion of his own, coupling. And he has said 100% no. The thing is that the Daily Beast has got the receipts and they've lined it all up and they've got the check from Herschel Walker. And you have to admit, if it walks like a duck, oftentimes the reasonable man syndrome, or standard kicks in. The check was cashed right after the abortion. It was right around the same amount plus expenses. So how do you get around that?
They're saying they have the receipts. What I've seen all over social media is the card saying, get better. We don't know what that was for. He does have this burden on him coming up into a debate. He's going to have to do better in addressing this than he's done over the last 48 hours. If he says he's going to file a lawsuit, he's got to file a lawsuit. When he's confronted with the card that you've got on the screen, he's got to do better than to say, well, I've given a lot of people money. He needs to work on his responses. I think the most damaging thing coming from his son was the repetition of the word lie, because people don't mind so much what's in people's past. Another great cliche, it's not the crime, it's the cover up. So if he looks like he's trying to cover it up, if his story is that he categorically denies it, people respect that, because then they see this as being dirty tricks. I think if that is his story and he's able to persuade people that this is another dirty trick and that it's the left overplaying their hand and trying to come after him, which is how it is playing. Ashleigh, we had reports just before we come out on air that he is having record-breaking fundraising today in the wake of these accusations. So it doesn't look to me like the people of Georgia are buying this story, and I think he can.
So I got to get Phil in. Let me jump in. Yeah, and it's interesting that Charmaine brings up, the power of Herschel Walker's son, Christian Walker, and what he said. I want to add a little bit to what Christian Walker tweeted out. That was the comments that he did as a videotape, but then he tweeted this. Philip, he said, I know my mom and I would really appreciate if my father, Herschel Walker, stopped lying and making a mockery of us. You're not a family man when you left us to bang a bunch of women, threatened to kill us, and had us move over 6 times in 6 months running from your violence. So that he then brings in the other baggage that Herschel Walker has, Philip. And the question I have is, when you have that much going on, and these were individually candidate killers in the past, why is it even close?
Well, I mean, the immediate answer, or the reason it's close, is because if there were going to be any effect, it's not going to have taken effect over the course of the past 24 hours, right? I mean, this is a close race in general because of partisan lines, because Democrats want to hold the seat and Republicans want to take the seat, and that's what's motivating a lot of people to want to cast their ballots here. We've already seen that Herschel Walker, the enthusiasm for him does not match, for example, Brian Kemp, the governor running for re-election in the state. It doesn't match other Senate candidates around the country, as recent Fox News polling has shown. There are a lot of people who are sort of lukewarm about Herschel Walker, and I think that's the question. The question is, will people who have to go, it's raining outside, are they going to bother to go cast the vote? Am I going to go, Brian Kemp's going to win anyway. I don't really love Herschel Walker. I'm just going to stay home. Is that going to play a role here? But yeah, I think fundamentally one of the questions is, to what extent do people hear about this, right? I mean, Herschel Walker and a lot of Republicans live in a conservative media bubble in which stuff like this doesn't tend to permeate. They're not going to see these comments from Christian Walker. They're not going to hear necessarily about some of the details. They'll hear the denial. Fox News didn't spend a lot of time covering this, right? This is not a big story beyond Sean Hannity interviewing Walker last night. Well, but, is this something that they're going to hear about at all anyway, which of course will affect things?
Yeah. They certainly might on social media, though. That's always the outlier. I have to leave it there. Philip Bump and Charmaine Yoest, thank you both. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ashley. Great to be with you.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.